I'm Milbank. We're on chapter 4 of Philip Pullman's The Adventure of the New Cut Gang, Thunderbolt's Waxwork. We'll carry on again. This chapter is called The Transformation of Dippy Hitchcock. Slumming, said Benny sagely, once they were all seated around the orange box again. We gotta get rummage slumming. Eh? Said Bridie. Slumming. Grover and Cohen told me about it, see? The trouble with snide coins is they look too new. If they was real silver tanners, they'd look more battered. So he's got to think that passing them out like this is dangerous. You ought to make them look older by slumming them. You make up a mixture of lamp black and oil and rub it in. And there they are slummed, see? So he gets the idea that he's got to do this. And so he does it. And we goes in and catches him red-handed. Oh, said Thunderbolt. I see, said Bridie. How were you going to make him do it in the first place? Said Thunderbolt. We get Dippy to go in and talk about it so Rummage overhears. Dippy's been excluded, Bridie pointed out. All right, someone else then. Grover or Cohen or someone, or your uncles, he said to Bridie. Well, yes, but how are we going to get in? She asked. How are we going to prove it? Said Thunderbolt. I'll borrow Grover and Cohen's detective camera and take a picture of him doing it. Bridie looked doubtful. They won't, said Bridie. S'posing, said Thunderbolt. I don't think, said Bridie. What if, said Thunderbolt. Benny lost his temper. You don't deserve me, he stormed. You deserve someone like Crusher Watkins telling you what to do. You deserve that blooming dummy leading you. I'm wasted here. You got no more daring nor imagination than a cupboard full of beetles. This is a plan what even Sexton Blake could be proud of. In fact, I think I'll go work for him full-time instead of leading you. I think I'll be his partner. I think he'd appreciate me. He'd say he wish he could think of plans like that. Yes, but supposing, what if? I was just going to say, said Thunderbolt, what if we got Dippy to let us in? There was a silence. Thunderbolt was sitting forward and blinking hard, the way he did when he was thinking, and he dabbed up his spectacles and tried to explain the idea that was wobbling in his mind like a soap bubble. It's my lead, he said breathlessly, my bit of lead. What I bought from Harry Fitchett, what came off the statue on the horse trough. It was Dippy wanting to be a waxwork. And it was the man in the window that other day when Dippy got his first snide tanner. What are you talking about? Said Benny. Thunderbolt explained. The summer before, the Metropolitan Horse Trough and Drinking Fountain Association had made the mistake of setting up a fine lead statue of King Neptune by the horse trough just across the road from J. Beasley, the scrap metal dealers. This was too tempting for the local citizens to resist. With lead fetching the price it did, and 36 hours after the statue was unveiled, it had vanished for good. Unrecognisable lumps of lead kept turning up at Beasley's yard for weeks after. In fact, it was one of those very lumps which was causing Thunderbolt such spasms of criminal guilt. But once the plinth was empty, the drinkers at the Lamb and Flag nearby felt it needed occupying, so one warm evening they each got up in turn and posed for the admiration and criticism of the general public. Tommy Glossop's Napoleon had been highly praised, and Mrs. Amelia Price's Lady Macbeth had pleased the connoisseurs of the drama. But Dippy Hitchcock's Moses parting the Red Sea had drawn gasps of admiration and a round of applause. Dippy had struck a dramatic attitude and held it for so long that you'd have thought the rest of him was made of wood as well as his head. As Mrs. Fanny Blodgett of the Excelsior Coffee Rooms put it, the Peretti twins had won 2 shillings betting on him. Ah, said Benny, with a sigh of profound satisfaction. I'm beginning to get it. Well, tell me then, said Bridie. We get Dippy dressed posh, said Thunderbolt. Clean him up a bit, and he goes and stands in the window like a dummy still at closing time, and then he lets us in. Bridie began to grin. Benny was grinning. It's a stunner, he said. It's a corker. It's the best one yet, said Bridie. And Thunderbolt began to think that things might not be so bad after all. They agreed to catch Dippy and put the plan in action next day. No point in hanging around, as Bridie said. When they left the hideout, Thunderbolt lingered behind. Bridie said, "Come on home, Thunderbolt." He twisted his lip. "I don't know," he said. "We're on the right track now. You can sleep in your own bed and Mar'll give you a feed. You can't stay here another night." Well, he looked back at the dummy. It looked so forlorn and abandoned that he felt almost bound to stay and keep it company. Bridie saw where he was looking. "Yeah," she said. "I got a funny feeling about that. I reckon we ought to hide it. That thief knew where it was, and I reckon the Frenchman was after it as well. He knows where to come now. The escaped lunatic? He won't come back after a trampling from Jasper. All the same, I reckon we ought to take it with us. You never know." "You never know," said Sharky solemnly. So they covered the wax head with an old nosebag of Jasper's, crammed the floppy limbs together and bound them tightly with a bit of twine that Thunderbolt kept around his waist as an emergency belt or climbing rope or lasso, and then manoeuvred the unwieldy bundle through the trapdoor and down the ladder homewards. It was strange being home again, and not at all nice. The grate was cold and full of ash. There was no oil for the lamp, and only a bit of stale bread to eat. Thunderbolt was on the point of feeling very sorry for himself. Indeed, when Bridie came down and invited him upstairs. "Ma say, if you don't come and have a bite of supper, she'll box your ears," she told him, so he had no choice. The Malone's kitchen was full of 5 different kinds of noises and 3 different kinds of smoke. Mrs. Malone was shouting, Sharky Bob was banging 2 spoons together, Uncle Paddy was playing a tin whistle, Mary and the 2 middle girls were arguing over a board game called Wibbly Wob, and a frying pan of potatoes was hissing and bubbling on the range. The 3 kinds of smoke came from the frying pan, the fire, and Uncle Mikey's pipe. "Here's the champion," said Uncle Paddy, who'd seen the famous fight with Crusher Watkins. "Have they let your da out yet?" said Mary. "Of course they haven't, else he'd have come home, wouldn't he?" snapped Bridie. Mrs. Malone turned her broad scarlet face to Thunderbolt. "What do you think you're doing, skulking in a stable all night, Gossoon?" she roared. "I thought they'd arrest me as well," Thunderbolt explained. "Let 'em try," she bellowed. "Bridie, dishes." She brought the frying pan to the table, and a tide of Malones came in from the floor, from under the chairs, from under the table itself. The smaller ones perched on the big one's knees. The uncles had a couple apiece, and Thunderbolt shared his chair with Sharky Bob. "Mind your bacon with Sharky," said someone. "Gobble it quick, else he'll have it." Mrs. Malone dished out the fried potatoes, and Uncle Paddy cut slices off a vast slab of boiled bacon. For a short while they'd all stopped talking. The sound was the clatter of cutlery and the munching of dozens of full mouths. Then there was a satisfied sigh, and then another, and Uncle Paddy said, "That was a fine piece of bacon, Michael." "A happy pig, Patrick," said Uncle Mikey. Thunderbolt saw a secret wink pass between them. Mrs. Malone cleared the bacon away and sliced up some bread and treacle for everyone. And then Bridie washed the dishes. Thunderbolt wondered when she was going to broach the subject of Benny's plan. But she knew her uncles. She waited until they got their pipes going and the kids were playing around their feet. When she'd done the dishes, she said, "Uncle Mikey, can you do us a favour?" Uncle Mikey didn't live there. He was visiting from Limehouse, where his bark was unloading. "As long as it's tomorrow, we're back off to the Baltic Sea the day after. What do you want me to do?" "You and Uncle Paddy both. You've got to go into Rummage's and walk around till you see Mr. Rummage himself. Then you got to mention snide money and see if he pricks up his ears. If he comes close and listens, you've got to talk about slumming." "What the devil's that then?" said Uncle Paddy. "Hush, Patrick, this is a prime lark," said Uncle Mikey. "Carry on, girl." "One of you's got to tell the other that what professionals do with a snide coin is to rub a mixture of lump black and oil into them to make them look used. Otherwise they look too new and people get suspicious. Just make sure old Rummage hears that and then walk away casual like. See?" Uncle Mikey raised his ginger eyebrows and directed a long stream of smoke at the ceiling. I can't imagine what this is all about, but I wouldn't mind playing a trick on that great swaggering Gomus, he said. What do you say, Paddy? Well, why not, said Uncle Patrick. And Thunderbolt felt as pleased as if both uncles belonged to him. Next morning, he intended to find Dippy at once, but unfortunately the school attendance officer was standing in the street with his little black notebook, and there was no escaping him. At playtime, Thunderbolt had a brief and almost absent-minded fight with a boy who said that Mr Dobney would certainly be hanged, and then Thunderbolt would have to go to the orphanage, and once he'd successfully mended his glasses with a piece of string from the emergency lasso, he settled down resignedly to learning the principal rivers of England and Wales. The drone of the master, the sniffing and scratching and fidgeting of the other kids, the stuffy fug that always developed when a lot of dirty bodies shared a close space with Big Iron Stove, it all enveloped him in with a gloom. As he trudged out of the boys' gateway at 4 o'clock, he heard Benny yell, "Thunderbolt!" from across the street, and saw him jumping up and down with impatience, beckoning him frantically. He darted across. "They'd done it," Benny said. "Bridie's uncles. They went in looking like a pair of swells, and they waited till Rummage was this far away. And when they started talking about the snide money, he jumped so much he nearly snapped his suspenders." Thunderbolt's gloom began to lift. "The trouble is, I ain't had time to find Dippy," he said. "The attendance officer nabbed us, and I couldn't escape." "Oh, blimey, he could be anywhere. If we don't get him in there tonight, we're sunk. I've been wondering how to tell him anyway." "Me too. I suppose the twins might know where he is." The Peretti twins, Angela and Zelina, were a year or two younger than the others. They had attached themselves to the New Cut gang some time ago, and for all Benny's scorn of kids, apart from Sharky Bob, he had a healthy respect for their sharp wits, not to mention their ferocity. You wouldn't think they were fierce to look at them. They looked like little Italian angels with big innocent brown eyes and masses of black curly hair. But when they were roused, they were worse than an African Sam, whose temper was legendary. And more to the point, Dippy was fond of them. They might be able to persuade him, and even if the boys couldn't. "Yeah," said Thunderbolt, "good idea." The two boys set off like greyhounds. They found the twins arguing with Snake Eyes Melmotte, the bookie, outside the Welsh Harp, dragged them away and told them the whole story in 50 seconds flat. "Right," said Angela, "we'll find him." "We'll make him do it if it's the last thing he does," said Zelina. They raced up and down the New Cut and along Lower Marsh, and saw a hot pea man and a muffin man and a pie man, but no Dippy. Then they charged up one side of Waterloo as far as the railway bridge, and down the other as far as St George's Circus, and then came back up again. And finally they ran into him, coming out of Chippins, the greengrocer's on the corner of Weber Row. "Dippy, listen! Dippy, you got to do something for us. You got to be a public benefactor. It's heroic, Dippy, and only you can do it." Dippy blinked at them suspiciously. "What?" he said. "It's easy, honest," said Thunderbolt, tugging his sleeve. "I'll push your stove for you, Dippy," said Benny. Dippy feebly allowed the twins to lead him along the crowded pavement behind his hot stove. "But," he said. "There's nothing to it, Dip," said Angela. "It's not as if we're asking you to shin up a drain pipe or crawl through a sewer or get shot or stabbed," said Zelina. "Or hanged or poisoned," said Benny. "Or suffer the death of 1,000 cuts like that bloke in the Waxworks." They didn't stop talking until they reached Clayton Terrace. They parked Dippy's stove in the backyard and went into Thunderbolt's kitchen, where Bridie was waiting by the light of a candle with scissors and flour and rouge and a jar of dripping. "What's this all about then?" said Dippy, profoundly suspicious. "What's that dripping for?" Your hair, of course," said Bridie. "It won't lie flat on its own, and we can't afford proper macassar oil. Now sit down and..." He goggled. "Me hair! And the flowers for your cheeks. No, don't let him run away. Sit down, Dippy. Do as you're told." Since she had a pair of scissors in her hand, And since she was her mother's daughter, he sat down at once. The twins held him down while she worked on him. Benny, meanwhile, was taking a suit out of a bag. He'd borrowed it from his father's workshop since the customer it was being altered for had to go away rather suddenly for his health, so he obviously didn't want it. Benny shook it out with practised hands, swung it this way and that to admire the nap of the cloth, and brushed a fleck or two of dust from the black shoulders. While he was doing that, Thunderbolt polished his father's best pair of boots. Mr Dobney had great big feet, so Dippy was bound to be comfortable in them. "You're going to look like the Duke of Clarence," said Benny admiringly. "I hope not," said Dippy. "He's dead." "Well, before he was dead, nice schmutter, this. Look at the cut, eh?" "I wish I knew what you were doing," Dippy mumbled. Thunderbolt stopped polishing to gaze at the change Bridie was working on Dippy's face. His moustache, a great ragged thing like the back end of a dirty dog, was trim and tidy. His grimy, all-weather complexion had been whitened to the colour of plaster of Paris with a flower, and then given a healthy pink glow with the help of the rouge, and his straggly grey hair was pasted flat with the dripping. Said Bridie, her head on one side. "He looks distinguished," said Angela. "He looks embalmed," said Zelina. "I know what it is," said Bridie suddenly. "It's his barnet." "Not more dripping," said Dippy helplessly. But Sharky Bob was scraping out the dripping pot. There was none left. He'd had it all. Anyway, that wasn't what Bridie had in mind. It's too grey," she said. "You look shocking. Old with grey hair." "I am shocking old." "Yeah, but that won't do tonight. You got to look young, fit and healthy. Give us that boot polish, Thunderbolt." "But why? Why?" Dippy gave a groan and closed his eyes. Taking no notice, she opened the tin of blacking. With the help of a table knife, she spread the sticky black substance on Dippy's hair, smoothing it artistically and running the back of the knife blade along the parting. When that was done, they made him stand up and got the suit on his nerveless limbs, and then made him step into Mr Dobney's boots. Then Angela adjusted the celluloid collar, and Zelina tied the tasteful lime green and violet cravat. They all gazed in awe. A shiny porcelain-like glaze covered Dippy's features. The boot polish and the dripping had combined into a glistening varnish, jet-black sheet over the top of his head. "Miraculous," said Benny. "You're a star, Dippy." 3 or 4 money-making schemes darted like hummingbirds through the tropical jungle of Benny's brain. We ignored them. There'd been plenty more. "Listen, we couldn't have picked a better night for it. That Mr Paget's been rearranging the windows. They'll never notice." The old man's eyes rolled from one to the other of them. His cheeks were too stiffly pasted for him to speak easily, but a flicker of alarm showed in his bloodshot eyes. "Windows?" he said. "What windows?" "Oh yeah," said Benny. "We better tell you the rest of the plan. Sit down, Dippy, old boy. Thunderbolt, guard the door." "Oh no. No. Absolutely not." "Oh yes, you got to." "I refuse." "You can't. You promise." "I never promised." "He did, didn't he? Didn't he promise?" "Dippy, this is a matter of public honour." "It's a matter of shame and humiliation, you mean? Me stand in Rummage's window like a ruddy mannequin? Oh no. Never in 1,000 years. You must be stark raving. Well, you are. I know you are. All you. Imps of Satan, tormenting me. Get thee behind me. Help." Dippy said. Bridie sternly looked at him. "If you don't do as you're told, I swear I'll think up a hideous vengeance." "Cuts his livers out," suggested Angela. "He's only got one," said Zelina. "You're thinking of kidneys. Them and all. Cut 'em out and hang 'em on his hot chestnut stove. That'd teach him a lesson." Dippy groaned and tottered. "I don't believe what's happening," he muttered. This must be an evil vision brought on by drink. I'll never touch it again, I swear. No, it ain't, Dippy, and you're no drunkard, said Bridie urgently. It's real, so listen, you old clot. You got a job to do. Dippy's eyes swiveled pleadingly from one to another of them and found no mercy. Even Sharky Bob was feeling the edge of his spoon as if it was a dagger and frowning like a buccaneer. Oh, all right, Dippy muttered. I know when I'm beat. They all sat down. Thunderbolt stayed near the door in case Dippy made a run for it, and Benny looked at the old tin clock on the mantelpiece. What's the time? 6 o'clock? That's good. We got 2 hours before rummages close. Now, listen, Dippy. You know these snide coins? Well, a fella called Stamper Billings made 'em 16 years ago and hid 'em in the basement where Rummage is now. And Rummage found 'em and he passes 'em out in the change. And no one knows except us. And we're going to catch him. So we made him think he ought to make the coins look old, else he'll be found out. And he's going to do it tonight. And we got a secret weapon. Look. And he produced with a flourish the detective camera that belonged to Messrs Grover and Cohen, which had taken him half an hour's solid pestering to borrow. It was a flat circular object bound in dark leather. You wore it hanging on your chest with the lens poking out through a buttonhole on your waistcoat, and you exposed each picture by pulling a string at the bottom. Now, listen, Dippy, he went on. We gotta get in and photograph Rummage with those coins. We can't hide in the shop and wait because he won't let us in the first place. So we need someone in there first to unbolt the door and let us in. So, catch him, said Bridie, and the twins each seized a leg of Dippy as he made for the window. There was a brief struggle, in the course of which the candle was knocked over. It went out at once. Got him? Said Benny. Sit him down then. Thunderbolt, where's the matches? Only got one left. We'll just have to sit in the dark then, said Benny. Dippy, you listening? And an inarticulate moan made its way out of Dippy's lips. Good, because it's got to be you what hides in there, and shh. It was Bridie, and she laid a strong hand on Benny's arm to emphasise the message. What's that noise outside? She whispered. Everyone fell still. In the yard outside the kitchen, someone was whispering, and then there came the unmistakable sound of fingernails on window frame, feeling for the way in. Then there was a cracking, splintering sound, followed by a whispered, You sure this is the right house? The other man whispered back, Yeah, it's right under that noisy old trot Mary Malone. Thunderbolt heard a soft intake of breath from Bridie. Benny made a signal, and all the kids sank to hide it in a crouch behind the table and the rocking chair. In the dim light, through the oilcloth blind, Thunderbolt could see Dippy, still sitting in his chair in a trance of fear, like a rabbit mesmerised by a snake. And you sure they brung it here? Said the first voice. I seen him. The kid with the glasses had it under his arm. They're talking about the dummy, Thunderbolt thought in astonishment. From the wide eyes gleaming beside him, he saw that the others were equally surprised, and then there was a soft tinkling sound as the glass fell to the floor, and the oilcloth blind was raised cautiously. Crouching very still, the kids saw two heads outlined against the sky. Then one man struck a match and lit a bull's-eye lantern. The smell of hot oil drifted into the room, and then a ray of light shone out full on the still figure of Dippy. That's it, came a hoarse whisper. You sure? Yeah. Horrible ugly thing. I'd know it anywhere. Get in quick and stuff it in the... But Thunderbolt could hold back no longer. Invading his home? Planning to steal his property? Normally, he was sure he was the most timid person in the whole of Lambeth, but out of somewhere, a great rage burst up in him. And he yelled with fury and leapt at the burglar. And then there was confusion. Finding the darkness inhabited by several imps or demons with whirling fists and savage teeth, Sharky having connected with a leg. Instead of a placid wax dummy, the invaders shouted in horrible terror and scrambled towards the open window. A hideous clatter of pots and pans, devilish yells and roars, the rip of the oilcloth tearing from top to bottom, the crash of the upturned table, and then both men were in the yard, bleating with fear and leaping over the wall and making off down the alley. Windows were flung open all around and faces peered down curiously. "Bridie!" came a mighty roar from above, and the kids, picking themselves up off the damp stones of the yard or leaning out the kitchen window, saw the huge form as Mrs Malone looking down, surrounded by clouds of steamy light. "What the divil's going on?" "Burglars, Ma!" Bridie called up cheerfully. "We chased them off." "I'm glad to hear it. Where's the boy?" "Hello!" shouted Sharky Bob. "I ate a leg, Ma. Bit it good." "Let's hope it wasn't poisoned," said Mrs Malone, and banged the window shut. The kids clambered back to find Dippy rigid with fear. He slowly opened one eye. "They're gone," he whispered. "That's the third time someone's been after that dummy," said Bridie. "There's more to this than meets the eye," said Angela. "Never mind that now," said Benny impatiently. "We better get Dippy over to Rummage's and settled in that window." Thunderbolt looked around the kitchen and twisted his lips at the damage. A broken window, a torn blind, and the big saucepan had a dent that wasn't there before. There was something more worrying than that. "Listen," he said, no one in particular. "Those blokes must have been tipped off." "Probably more art collectors," said Benny impatiently. "Probably going to put it in a private museum, but never mind that now. Come on, else Rummages will be closing." "No, listen," said Thunderbolt. "What do they want the dummy for? I reckon they'll try the same trick. I reckon they know we're on Rummage's tail." "I bet they don't," said Bridie. "No one knows that." "Come on," said Benny, fizzing with impatience. He tugged Dippy's arm. The twins followed, but Thunderbolt hung back. He was still puzzled about this and interested in the dummy. And so was Bridie. "That French geezer, the monsieur in the stable," she said, "he didn't look like a burglar. I don't think he's connected with this last lot at all. And the first lot. Bloke that took it, I swear that was Sid, the Swede. These blokes were different." "It's a mystery," said Thunderbolt. "I reckon it's as much a mystery as—" "Oh, I nearly forgot," she said, fishing a little metal flask out of her pocket. "Take this and give Dippy a drop if he comes over faint. It's Uncle Paddy's horse reviver. He gave it to old Charlie Maggot's mare when she wouldn't run. But aren't you coming?" "I just want to have another look at the dummy. I'll come on after." Before he left, Thunderbolt reached up to his museum and took out his lump of criminal lead. He hardly knew why he was doing it. He had the vague idea that he could drop it in the gutter and pretend it had nothing to do with him. "Come on, Thunderbolt," said Angela, coming back to drag his arm. "Yeah, I'm coming." They caught up with the others at the end of Heriot Street, just around the corner from Rummage's. Dippy had a bowler hat pulled down so low and a muffler pulled up so high that all you could see between them were two watery eyes and a pointy, white, glistening nose that looked as if it would break off if knocked against anything. He was shuffling along in Mr Dobney's boots, unable to lift his feet because he left the boots behind when he did. "You must have really little feet, Dippy," said Angela, "like a chest of drawers or something." "Never mind his trotter boxes," said Benny. "Once he gets in that window, he can't take them off if he wants to. It wouldn't be surprised if Rummage is going to close a bit earlier tonight. I bet he's anxious. I bet he's consumed by guilt. I bet he feels shocking nervous." Dippy had begun to tremble. Thunderbolt saw his knees shaking in the tight trousers, and then he heard a clicking sound, which was Dippy's 4 teeth going. "What's he doing? He's not shivering. You can't have a shivering dummy. It'll give the game away at once," said Benny, disconcerted. "He better have some of this," said Thunderbolt. "Huh? What's that?" said Dippy. "It's Bridie's Uncle Paddy's horse reviver," explained Thunderbolt. "I should think one good swig would set you up for an hour at least." Dippy inserted the flask between the muffler and the hat brim. There was a brief sucking noise and then a gasp. "Nice, Dippy?" said Zerlina. He couldn't speak. He murmured faintly and handed back the flask. Benny took a sniff at it and made a face. Whatever it had done for Charlie Maggot's mare, the horse reviver had certainly fortified Dippy. He shuffled barely forward, head held high in order to see under that hat brim. They stopped by the bright gaslit windows of the big store, where crowds of customers struggled to get through the crowds coming out. Thunderbolt felt a rush of anger. Here was Mr. Rummage, making all the money he must be making, and Silly was so mean that he couldn't resist passing out snide coins and having another man punished for it. "Do your best, Dippy," he said. "You got that horse reviver?" Dippy muttered. "Give him the flask," said Angela. Thunderbolt passed it over. "Do you think that's a good idea?" said Selina. "It's only a little flask," said Benny. "It's good for him, I expect. It smells horrible, so it's bound to be." They saw the sense of that, all having experienced medicines of uncommon vileness in their time. "Good luck, Dippy," said Thunderbolt, and Dippy put the flask in his pocket, shuffled forward into the great shop. No king or queen had ever felt more proud of their army on the way to battle than the New Cook gang felt of Dippy Hitchcock then, as he weaved uncertainly through the crowds and into the very jaws of danger. Well, that's the end of chapter 4. I hope you enjoyed it. Tune in for chapter 5 soon. See you all soon. Bye.